their precious metals, and for a little sum of money, they would protect these precious metals if you wanted. And if you gave them your precious metals, instead of them giving you a metal back to make it more convenient, they will give you what? Receipt. And so that introduced the next phase of money called what? Receipt money. In the receipt money was not valuable. It only represented that which was valuable, and so the receipt became as good as gold. Is that right? Now today, most people think their dollars are receipt money. People bring out their $5, $10 bill and they think it's receipt money. Most people today don't even understand what money is today. Do you know that in legislation there is not even a federal explanation of what money is? In fact, some years ago, a man, strange enough, his name was Mr. Davis, literally. He wrote to the government, to the Federal Reserve. And he had a $10 bill in the Federal Reserve, and he wanted to show the Federal Reserve something. So he wrote them a letter, and in his letter he said to them, here is a $10 bill, and on that bill it said, redeemable for real money. So he sent them the $10 bill to the Federal Reserve, and he said, the bill says this is redeemable for real money. Would you please send me $10 of real money? So the Federal Reserve got, and they wrote back to him. And the Federal Reserve took another series of Federal Reserve notes of $5 and put two $5 in there and sent it back to him. He gets the letter and it says, I got your request for real money, and here are two $5 bills of real money redeemable from the U.S. Treasury. He gives it to him. The man looks at it, and on this money, of the $5 bills, it says redeemable for legal money. So Mr. Davis took that letter back and sent it back to the Federal Reserve, and he said, I noticed that you said this was redeemable for legal money. And so he says, would you please send me $10 of legal money? And he sent it back, and the Federal Reserve got it and sent it back to him with the same two $5 bill. And they said, I noticed that you send this for legal money. He says that the Federal Reserve said, well, actually, there is no definition of money in our Constitution. As of 1964, they removed every expression like that from off all the dollars. They no longer say redeemable for real money or legal money. They took them all away. And then they said, so you can take this as real money from now on. This is what real money is. And then he sent it back. Now tell me, is that the way it always was? So now people take those receipts. They take their $10, $100 and walk around and think that it represents real money. They think that it is receipt money as good as gold. But the U.S. dollar is not as good as gold. The U.S. dollar, we're going to see tonight, is very interesting. Oh, this is very interesting when we study it. The U.S. dollar is worth less than the money it's printed on. Now, I told you yesterday. Now, if you were here yesterday, if you weren't here, please get all the tape, the information, the materials, because then you can go back and study through. But I'll try to make it simple enough so that all of us can understand. Then we found out from after this receipt money that it became understanding, the goldsmiths became knowledgeable enough to know that only a percentage of the people ever came back to get their real money, because the receipts started circulating as if they were real gold. So nobody said, well, why am I going to use the gold if everybody's taking receipts? We might as well use the receipts. It made sense. It was convenient. Everybody wanted it. The stores wanted it. The banks wanted it. It was just easier business. So they moved, and the bankers began to recognize that maybe we don't need to use all of that gold there. Maybe we can lend out more of that, because only a fraction ever come back to get that money. Are you with me? And so then began what was called what type of money? Fractional money, where there were actually more paper receipts than there was actually real money to back it. Are you with me? And so if there's more receipts than there is money to back it, what happens to the value of those paper receipts? Everybody's value goes what? It goes down. It goes down. And as long as the fraction goes on, if I were to take something and I were to keep fractioning it smaller and smaller, eventually it comes to the place where it's what? Where it's nothing. Is that right? Worthless. And I keep just fractioning something smaller, smaller, smaller. I keep breaking it down, until finally I have nothing left. Are you with me? When you have nothing left, it goes into the last state of money. And what is it called? Fiat money, which simply means paper money that is worthless, but you have to take it because it's legal tender, meaning that it's enforced by law. Now, brothers and sisters, this is the whole cycle of what happens to money whenever you move from the honest principles of money into a system called fractional reserve banking. Now, as I said before, when I used to study through money, I used to think that the action was in the stock market because a lot of money goes through the stock market. Is that right? Do you know that just a few weeks ago, when the stock market crashed 778 points, do you know that in about a week's time, they lost $1 trillion? That's a lot of money. But brothers and sisters, who makes the money? The stock market? No, stock market don't make the money. Who makes the money? The Federal Reserve makes the money. So we can see that the foundation of the economy is not based on the stock market. The foundation of the economy, no matter how much trillions of dollars they are, all of that comes from the system that is called the Federal Reserve System, and the type of system that they use, because it is a monetary system, but the type of system that the Federal Reserve use is called fractional reserve banking. You can look this up on your internet. You can look up on an encyclopedia. They don't cover it. They don't hide it. They know that most people simply don't understand it. And so the fractional reserve banking always starts off this way. But remember, whenever you start in fractional reserve banking, what is the end result? Fiat money, meaning that your money is worthless, it becomes zero. Do you know that this has happened in almost every nation that has become a nation? And every time that it gets to fiat money, it always turns into a revolution. Did you know that? In every nation that this has happened, it has always turned into a revolution. Every time. And this is what is taking place now. Our money today has turned into worthless money. In fact, it's very interesting. The Federal Reserve, let me tell you the story of how the Federal Reserve makes money. We said that they use something called fractional reserve banking, which simply means that all you need is a fraction of the money that you loan out. Now, do you know that there's nothing federal about the Federal Reserve? Did you know that? It's not a federal institution. Do you know that there's no reserves? We talk about Federal Reserve System, but there is literally no reserves. I promise you. I have papers printed by the Federal Reserve Company themselves that will actually tell you this. How do they make money? Let me show you how. The government, in 1913, when the government, under the political scientists and the monetary scientists, they formed what is called a type of union or a cartel that came together to work together so that they could both benefit each other at the expense of the people. Have we been told that would take place? Listen to what this says from the book Education 2:28. Listen to this. Listen to what the prophet says. It says, at the same time, anarchy is what? Seeking to sweep away all law, not only divine but human. The centralizing of, what does centralizing mean? The taking of the wealth in all the different places and bringing it into one place. Are you with me? Have you ever heard of a central bank? Do you know that the Federal Reserve System is a central bank? Did you know that? Now, this was written before the Federal Reserve was ever created. This was written before they established the central bank, and the prophet told us that this would take place. Now, listen to what it says. The centralizing of wealth and power. So it takes the rich men who have the money and the political men who have the what? Power. So it combines politicians along with the financiers to make this agreement. This is what the Federal Reserve is. It took the money magicians, it took the political scientists to come together in order to make this so-called magic. Now watch what happens. It says the centralizing of wealth and power, the vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of what? At the expense of the many. Now I want you to keep that in your mind. We'll come back to this, but let me keep it up. Expense of the many, the combinations of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims. Now notice the result. The spirit of unrest, what else? Riot, bloodshed, the worldwide dissemination of the same teachings that led to the... So all of this system always leads to a revolution. The same thing that led to a French Revolution, all are tending to involve the what? It's a global crisis that's taking place. It's going to involve the whole world in a struggle similar to that which convulsed France. So that same centralizing of wealth and power, they had a central bank there. That same system that led to the revolution, it is going to take place on a global setting that is going to bring a chaos more severe than anything we've ever seen. Are you with me? Now, we'll understand that more as we study a little bit more. I just wanted to put that on the plate so that your mind would be keeping that in mind as we study together. Now, we found out as we studied that this is exactly what is taking place in the United States of America, and we want to notice now, how does the Federal Reserve make money? Now, if you come, the government says, I need money, like the bailout that just took place. How much money did the government make? How much money did the government need for that bailout? 700 what? Billion dollars. Now, how did the government get that money? They went to where? The Federal Reserve System. Now, if the Federal Reserve doesn't have money, how in the world does money come about? How are they able to do it? Well, it happens because of the system of banking in which they have. What is that system? All they need is a fraction of something in order to loan it out. Now, guess how much they need? This is literal. Guess how much they need? Only 10% of whatever they loan. Did you hear what I said? How many percent? Now, I'm going to take it down lower than 700 billion because the figures might be so high it will be impractical to talk about it. Let's take it down to just $1,000. Is that right? So let's say all of a sudden the Federal Reserve, the government says, I need $1,000. So they go to the Federal Reserve and they print up what is called a bond, a government bond. What is a government bond? A government bond is just something that says, it is a loan. In other words, they say, I will owe you. It's an IOU. Is that right? So the government bond, they take a $1,000 government bond and they take it to the Federal Reserve. Now, because of the Federal Reserve System only needing a fraction of the money, 10%, guess how much money the Federal Reserve can now loan if they get $1,000? You say $100? Not so. They can loan $9,000. And you say, how can you do that now? Now, don't tell me. It doesn't make sense, but this is the system that they use. Amen? This is the system they use because all they need, they don't need the whole amount. All they need is a fraction. How much of the fraction? 10%. So they take that government bond, that IOU, and they take the debt of that $1,000. They put that debt into the reserve column. Do you know that is the reserve of the Federal Reserve? Do you know the reserve is the debt? So the reserve is that $1,000 debt, and now they say we have a $1,000 reserve. So that means that 1,000 is 10% of what? 1,000 is 10% of 10,000. Is that right? So they can't loan out 10,000 because that'll be all the money. They can only loan 10% of that, which means they can now loan $9,000. Now I want to ask you something. Where did that $9,000 come from? It came from nowhere. And in fact, it came better from nowhere. It actually came out of debt. Now, you must understand this. So debt is what actually increases the money supply. Now, if you understand this, you will understand that the government does not want to pay off the national deficit. You see, every year as we see the national deficit, we're at $10 trillion, and the government does not really want to pay it off because guess what will happen? Now watch this. Now, if the Federal Reserve is how it makes money, it expands the money supply by loans. In other words, once I take this $1,000, now I have just created $9,000. I'm in the money. Is that right? But what happens now if I take away that debt of 1,000? What happens to my 9,000? It disappears. So if you pay off debt, you have no more money on the Federal Reserve System. Do you know literally today, if every